Hi, it's Penny here, and today I want to do a couple of things in this video. Firstly, I want to go through my reading goals for 2022 and see how we did. And while we're at it, we'll go through my reading stats for the year. I've got lots of fun graphs. I love making graphs of my reading and figuring out different ways of visualizing things. And maybe we can use that to see how I do with my goals, but also come up with some ideas about how we could do better next year with our reading. Because 2022 was not the best reading year, to be honest. Okay, so my first reading goal of the year was the number of books that I wanted to read in the year. To be honest, I always just set this at 100 books, even though that's pretty easily achievable for me. If I read one physical book and one audiobook every week in the year, it gives me the leeway to skip a few weeks. But honestly, I often read more than that. So 100 books is a nice, easy goal. And secretly underneath it, I have a stretch goal of 150-ish. I don't really want to read much more than that though, because I feel like if I'm reading too much more than that, I'm probably spending too much time on reading and not enough stuff on the other things in my life. Maybe I should really be setting a range for the number of books that I want to read within. I don't know. Anyway, I actually managed to read 146 books in 2022. So that is success for that reading goal. And when I looked back, I thought I read less books in 2022 than previous years, but actually it's about the same. Even 2020, when I wasn't working for the majority of the year, and also we were in lockdown for most of that year, so I had a lot of time for reading. Even that year, I didn't read that much more. So I think it's that 150 is kind of a good amount for me. Interestingly though, I did look a little bit more into the amount that I was reading. And if we look at the pages I read throughout the year, that went down significantly in 2022 compared to 2020. And I thought maybe it was because I had been reading a lot more graphic novels, and just because they're quite short, they'd be bringing down that average page count. Because the average page length of the books I've been reading has also come down a lot in the last few years. But then I had a look, and actually in 2021, I read way more graphics than I read in 2022. So that's not what was bringing it down. I think it's more that I was actually quite stressed at work in 2022, and I don't think I had the brain power for reading some of the longer books that I often read, like those long epic fantasies. I didn't pick up many of those at all. So I think the average page length of the books I was reading came down because I wasn't reading those bigger books. And I think that's what affected my overall page count for the year as well. So I read about the same amount of books, but I probably read easier books because that's what I had the brain power for. I think in 2023, hopefully, I'll have some more brain power. Maybe. Also interesting is that for audiobooks, I actually listened to more hours of audiobook. I think possibly in 2022, when I did attempt longer books, I tended to do it via audiobook. So the average length of the audiobooks I was listening to was longer this year compared to previous years. I think when I get stressed, I tend to listen to audiobooks more and go for a walk and try to decompress a little bit while I listen to my audiobook. And when I'm not stressed, that's when I have that brain power to curl up with a really long book. 2020, even though it was a pandemic, end of the world kind of situation, lockdown was good for me as far as my mental state went. So I don't miss COVID at its peak in 2020 was at its peak. Anyway, I don't miss those times, but I do miss lockdown, to be honest. And 2023, we're going to try and get some more of those lockdown vibes since I'm not going to be working. Did I have any other stats about the amount I was reading? I guess the only other thing that I don't think fits any of my other reading goals, but is related to the amount I was reading, is my average rating. I know previously in 2021, I think I had a goal to increase my average rating. And you can see that I did it, but in 2022, things came down again. But I honestly don't know if I feel like my overall ratings are consistent. So I'm not sure if that really means anything significant. Also, overall, those numbers are all pretty close. So is it significantly different, in terms of statistical significance? Probably not. Okay, then my next reading goal for 2022 was TBR Zero. And for this, I was specifically talking about the non-series, so the standalones on my physical TBR shelves. This had been my goal in 2021, and in 2021, I almost achieved it. I was down to just 6 books left on my TBR shelves. So you would think, with only 6 books to read, I could definitely get to TBR Zero in 2022, right? But I did not. So of those 6 books, I actually only read 2 of them. There's still another 4 on my shelf that I need to read. And as well, I bought a whole bunch of books. I think I've got a note here. So I started with 6. I bought 23 books. I've read 12 of those. Or I read 10 of those that I'd bought. And then 2 of the 6 I already had. Maths. Anyway, I started with 6. Now I've got 17. But, 15 of those I only bought this year. So I think going forward, to make things a little bit more sustainable, I think the rule is just going to be that I need to always be having read any of the books that I bought in the previous year. And any books that I buy in that year are allowed to spill over. Because I don't know if I really want TBR Zero properly. Because would I really want to have no books to read? I don't think so. I think the goal of this was just to not have such an overwhelming TBR, and I think I've achieved that. So, not achieved, but also, maybe the spirit of the goal was achieved. Maybe, or maybe I'm just fooling myself. I'll probably do a video next week, I think, where I'll go through all the books that are left on my TBR and also all the books that I bought last year. And we can have a think about whether I made good decisions or not. Anyway, then my third reading goal for the year was Series Zero. So this is where I was trying to get all the series I had in progress down. So I've written down that I had 111 books to read to catch up on all my series at the start of the year. And I know in my spreadsheet here, I have a new count. So currently, I need to read 44 books. Maths, 56, 57, 67, I think. That means I reduced it by about 67. However, I didn't actually read all of those. I think I did the maths before, and there's about 13 that I just decided to DNF certain series and not continue to push through. I'll probably also do some videos later where I wrap up all the series I finished and all the series I DNF'd throughout the year, and maybe a quick overview of all the series I still have to go. There's not that many though. On my list here, I've got about 13, which is pretty good because I think at the start of the year there were about 30 series that I was trying to catch up on. So again, I didn't make Series Zero, but I think as well, I never expected to. And to be honest, I probably made more progress than I thought I would. And I think I am at a point now where Series Zero would be, potentially, a realistic goal for next year. This year. 2023. Wait, do I have any graphs about series? I guess the only graphs I really have is I did read about 57% series and 43% standalones last year. I actually haven't tracked that in previous years, so I need to, if I want to keep tracking this, maybe go back and add it to some of my older spreadsheets. So I don't know whether this is higher than previous years, but I expect it would be, given that I really did put an effort into Series Zero in 2022. I really tried. I think I have another graph that kind of shows how much I was bringing it down throughout the year, and I was often reading more than 5 books to catch up on series every month. I think I was aiming for 10 every month, and maybe if I'd done that, I would have finished the whole lot. But 10 books from series every month is a lot, and I did not achieve that. But I think that was unreasonable to expect of myself anyway, so I'm not mad about it. But I guess, technically, I failed this reading goal as well. However, I think, again, I succeeded in spirit. I never thought I was going to get to Series Zero. I just wanted to make some really good progress, and I think I did that. Okay, but goal number 4 is one I didn't do very well at. So I knew that focusing on series, I was going to do really bad at reading diversely, because so many of the series that I needed to catch up on were written by white men. So that skewed my reading stats. And I kind of accepted that even though the year before I'd tried to make an effort to read more diversely, that I wouldn't do as well in 2022. And I'm glad I had that expectation, because I did not do as well. So let's look at the graph. So you can see here I read 76.7% white authors. Also, I do want to acknowledge it's kind of icky tracking the race of authors, because it's not always immediately apparent, and some people say, you shouldn't track it, you should just be reading diversely. But I find if I don't track it, it would be really easy to think that I'm reading diversely and then not actually be. So I like to keep myself accountable, but I also accept that these statistics are not going to be fully accurate. It's more just to give myself a guideline, am I doing better or am I doing worse? Because I want to be reading from a range of perspectives. And I can see that I didn't do that great at that in 2022. I do have like this graph of the ethnicity split in New Zealand, and that's kind of where I would like to be reading. There are some difficulties with doing that, like the 7.2% Pacific Islanders. As far as I can tell, there just aren't the books out there being published for me to ever hit that number. I don't know how to do it. So like, I don't think I'm ever going to hit the exact distribution, but I would like to get the amount of white authors I'm reading down below 70% was my goal. Now I know in 2021 I almost got there, but not quite. But as you can see in 2022, I was well over 70%, well over it. Now to be honest though, when I look at this, I feel like the numbers aren't that different between the 3 years, and that's sad because in 2021 I actually really tried. But one thing you will notice is that when I was trying, I did actually find myself a source of Māori authors and a way of finding Māori authors. And then in 2022, even though I wasn't trying, I still managed to hit that same kind of number. And that's because like I found that pipeline of books. So I always have Māori authored books that I want to read that I know about. And so I thought, even though I knew while I was focusing on series, I would do really bad at reading diversely in terms of race in 2022, I thought I would put some effort into building up that same kind of pipeline for other races other than Māori authors. I didn't do it. I was too stressed and busy with work. But 2023, I won't have that excuse, so we'll try and do better, shall we? The only other kind of diversity that I really track is gender. I feel like anything else gets a bit like intrusive to track, but also to be honest, I never find this graph very interesting. I've always read quite heavily women authors, and so even trying to catch up on series and reading a lot of books by white males, still I think this distribution is one that I'm fairly happy with. I do know that consistently I rate books by non-binary authors super high. I don't know, it's probably just the ones that I'm picking, but even though I think 3% is like representative of the population, I rate them highly, so maybe I need to track some more down. I know that I really wanted to read some more Karen Tidbeck, but I haven't managed to do that, so yeah, not much else to say here really. So I guess diversity pipeline, I didn't do so great at, but we'll carry that over to 2023. My next goal was to keep reading Māori authored books, and I think I did okay at this. How many did I actually read in total? I think at some point, I don't know if it was in 2022 or the year before, I had a goal to read one a month. 10 would be slightly under that, so I probably could have done slightly better. And there are still plenty of Māori authored books around that I really want to read. I just haven't had time to get them. And some of them are actually hard to get your hands on, the ones that I really want to read. So we will keep trying again in 2023. I just honestly, all my goals, I feel like I always fall short. And we just say, we'll keep trying. We'll keep trying. My next two reading goals were ones that are not necessarily about what I was reading, but how I was reading. So firstly, I wanted to consistently be reading before bed. I know, 100%. When I read before I go to bed, I sleep so much better. But always I end up too busy and just mucking around on my phone, and I don't know. I often end up not doing it. And in 2022, like, I don't think I did it anywhere near as much as I wanted to. Sometimes I did it, but not enough. But also, like, I didn't track it in any kind of way. And I find it really hard to track because, like, when I'm reading before bed, that's a completely different mindset from the kind of Penny that would be tracking, like, whether I've done it or not. Like, reading before bed Penny is super relaxed and doesn't care about the future or plans or bigger pictures or anything. Whereas, like, tracking things Penny is the Penny that makes graphs, the Penny that wants to track everything and have data and be able to make cool visualizations. She is a whole different girl. So I don't know how to get these two working together. Probably I need to just track it in the morning, because that's normally when Getting Organized Penny comes out. But also, if I'm going to do this, I need to work out how to be finishing all my other shit early enough so that I can go to bed early and read. Because there's no point going to bed when you're meant to be sleeping and then reading, because then you don't get enough sleep, and then you get up in this whole horrible cycle of not having enough sleep, which means you don't get stuff done, so then you don't have time to read before bed and continue. So this is still definitely something I feel like would be good for me, but like, I feel like I've been trying to get into this routine for years and not achieving it. However, once again, the last couple of years I've been working. This year I'm not working, so like I should be able to be much more in control of my own routine. I should be able to read before bed, right? But you know, it's the end of January and I haven't really done it yet. Although, admittedly, half of January we have been away on road trips, so I haven't really gotten into my 2023 routine yet. That's why I'm doing goals videos at the end of January and the start of February, because I'm only just getting to the point of thinking about those things. So, reading before bed every day, fail? I feel like I'm doing very bad at all these goals. I can't even argue that I did the spirit of that one. I just failed. Then the last one that I had was audiobook walks. I don't know if I set some kind of actual goal for myself, but I wanted to be going for regular, like, hour-long walks where I listen to my audiobook. Again, I find those, like, amazing for my mental health, like getting out in nature, getting the fresh air, just, like, listening to my audiobook so that it kind of fills my mind and I'm just, like, in kind of like a zen state, wandering around, listening to a story. It's just a great time, and I want to be doing that regularly. But again, did I track how often I was doing that? No. I do know that I listened to more hours of audiobook this year than I have previous years, so that's a good sign that I did this often. I did go for quite a lot of runs sometimes, like not consistently throughout the year, but at times I was going for runs, and I know I listened to my audiobooks while I was doing that. So like, I didn't track it properly, and that's maybe something I need to work on, but like, I think I did okay with this. Again, not consistently. And every time I would stop doing it, that's when my mental health would go down. But like, I think it's a chicken and egg situation. Like, when my mental health goes down, I tend not to go for walks, which then damages my mental health, and we spiral downwards until we can somehow reset things. So, actually, I do have a graph. If we look at the amount I was reading throughout the year, so you can see for audiobooks, some months I listened to a lot, like April, 177 hours. Do you know, April, May, and June, I was not working. So that'll be why that's so high in those months. Although June started going down, that's probably because I started having conversations about going back to work in July. And you can also see September, the worst month in terms of listening to audiobooks. That is because September was the most stressful month in terms of work, and so I hardly did any reading. You can also see, like, in terms of pages I read per month, like September was also, not quite the worst. January was worse, but that's because, again, January is summer here in New Zealand, so we always go on road trips, and so like I often don't get a lot of reading done in January because I'm just enjoying the summer. March was also worse. That's probably because I was trying to finish up my job, and that was a bit stressful. Like, I was handing over my job to someone else, and I was really busy. So it's basically work always ruins my reading, and so hopefully we won't have that excuse this year because we're not doing work this year. Actually, there is one other graph. If we look at my average rating throughout the year, you can see September also crap, November crap. Basically, the whole year has like this downward trend, and I don't know, like, is it because I was reading worse and worse books? I kind of think it was, but I also think it was just because I was feeling more and more negative about everything, that I was rating things more negatively. So I'd like to think about how I can be more consistent with my rating in the future so that when I see trends like this, I can know that they're accurate. Although ratings are always going to be somewhat subjective, but like, how do I try to take my mood out of the equation somewhat? So those were all my reading goals. To be honest, I think the only one that I properly succeeded at was the goal to read 100 books. I probably succeeded to some degree or in spirit for TBR Zero, Series 0, reading Māori Authored books in my audiobook walks. I definitely failed at creating a diversity pipeline and reading before bed. So those are the ones I probably want to focus on in 2023. But anyway, before we go, I'm sure I have some more graphs for us to look at. So let's have a look at what we've got. Firstly, let's look at where the books I read came from. I track this in a few different ways. I guess more detailed is this graph. People often say, oh, you've only got to read like 20 something books to get TBR Zero. That can't be that hard because you read 150 books a year. The thing is, when you look at it, I actually only read about 15% of those books from my TBR. A lot of books come from the library, either in audiobook form or just physically. Also borrow some books from my family. I've got Audible. I have cancelled my Audible subscription though, so that will be gone in 2023. And like overall, 75% of the books that I read are borrowed books. I'm not mad about that percentage because I love using the library. And like, how cool is it that you can read that many books without having to spend any money? Amazing. But also, like, if I'm going to buy books, I need to be reading them. So we'll see. But I am also planning to probably buy a lot less books. Again, since I'm not working in 2023, I won't have the money. Also, we're considering moving, so I need less things to move. So probably I won't be buying many books this year. So I think I'll probably still be borrowing a lot of books. And I'm happy with that. Also, like 50% of my reading is audiobooks. I think looking back, that's pretty standard for me. Maybe it's gone up a little bit. But generally, I think the format that I'm reading throughout the year, in terms of audio, analog, or digital, like that's not that different year to year. And I don't really expect it's going to change in 2023. I do also have some stats on genre. Interestingly, in 2022, I read a lot of fantasy. Again, I think this is because I was focusing on catching up on series, and fantasy often has a lot of series, so a lot of those series that I'm trying to catch up on are fantasy books. So 66% fantasy. I think in 2021, I actually had a goal to read less fantasy because I wanted to read more science fiction, mystery, thrillers, and horrors. I definitely did a bad job of that in 2022, but it wasn't really a goal that I had, but I think I would still like to be reading a lot more sci-fi. And I really, I want to find thrillers and horrors that I like, but I think I still haven't got the gist of how to pick ones that I like. Because when I look at my average ratings per genre, mystery, thriller, and horror are the lowest. But I don't think it's because I dislike those genres. I think I just haven't found the ones that I like. Or the ones that are often really hyped are not the ones that I like. And I need to not buy into that hype. I need to find a different way of selecting them. Also, when I look at my average rating per genre, the highest is nonfiction at 4.3. Now, that's probably because I didn't pick up many nonfictions. In fact, actually, according to this, I only read one. How is the average 4.3? Oh, because I actually do my ratings in a complicated way, so I could have given it a 4.3 according to the spreadsheet. What was that book? Oh, Atomic Habits. Yeah, that was good. Anyway, it wasn't an official goal, but I am also sad that I read less science fiction in 2022. That's something I want to read more of in 2023 because I really love science fiction. Like a good science fiction, is there anything better? I don't know. Another stat that I do have here is kind of the age range that the books are targeted at. So middle grade, young adult, and adult. I don't really have any goals for this. I think in 2021 I was trying to read less YA books and I did succeed at that. 2022 I read more YA books again, but I think that's because I was focusing on certain series like the Skullduggery Pleasant series, which I counted as YA. Some books are kind of debatable where they sit in terms of these demographics, especially like a really long series like Skullduggery Pleasant. Like, were the first books more middle grade? Maybe. Were the last ones more YA? Maybe. Anyway, I put them as YA, so I think that's part of why this number's so high. I do find it interesting that my middle grade percentage hasn't really changed, and I think that's kind of a good amount of middle grade books for me. And I kind of want to say that I want to read less YA books, but when I look at my average rating, I actually have the same for adult books and YA books in 2022, so I think it's more that I just need to be careful when I select YA books to read because that's not my age. I'm well out of the YA age range, so not all the themes that those books are focusing on are going to be themes that I'm interested in. So I just have to be careful with those books sometimes in terms of how I select them. But I guess I don't really have a goal here. I think maybe the only other stat that's interesting to look at here is my star rating distribution per year. So I felt like 2022 was not a great reading year. As I said before, my average rating was the lowest of the 3 years that I'm kind of looking at here. But when we look at the distribution, actually the percentage of 5 stars I gave was higher than previously. And like 4 stars wasn't that much down. It was the highest percentage of 1 stars. Still only 2%, but 1 and 2 stars are books that I found like objectively bad. And that is more of those than ever before. Not much more, but definitely more than 2021. Although I know compared to 2020, I tried to be much more generous about giving books 4 stars when they were kind of like borderline 3 or 4 stars. But as I said as well, I think I'm just really inconsistent with my star ratings. So that's something I want to figure out how to do better. I don't know. Let me know if you've got any ideas about how to make star ratings more consistent. I have some ideas, but I need to get them together a bit. Anyway, I guess that is all my reading goals from 2022, all my reading stats. Let me know if you found anything particularly interesting in this. And also let me know if there's any other reading stats that you track that you find particularly interesting. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.